It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Saturday, August 2nd. August 2nd, 1 p.m. It's not that far away. 1 p.m. Books and Greetings is our new independent bookstore. Beautiful little bookstore. I know you're going to love it. Located in Northvale Square, 271 Livingston Street, Northvale, New Jersey. I hope you'll join me there. We have a wonderful time. This will be a brand new venue. It's very exciting for us. It's a wonderful, family-owned, independent bookstore. One more time, and it's all over our social media. So I really want you to check it out. Books and Greetings, August 2nd, Saturday, August 2nd, 1 p.m. in the Northvale Square, located in Northvale Square, 271 Livingston Street, Northvale, New Jersey. They're very, very excited to have us there, and we're very excited to be there. The next Saturday, August 9th. August 9th, 10 a.m. Hello, August 9th, 10 a.m. Barnes & Noble, the Spectrum at Reston Town Center. You won't want to miss that in Reston, Virginia. Barnes & Noble has been really good this time around, really good, as has Costco, as has Amazon, as have a number of them. Actually, all the retailers have been outstanding, all of them. So I want to thank them and tip my hat to them. But that's August 9th, Saturday, Barnes & Noble, the Spectrum, in Reston, Virginia. So two fantastic locations. We're very excited about both. We haven't been to Books and Greetings in Northvale, New Jersey. We haven't been to the Barnes & Noble in Reston, Virginia. So there you have it. We're trying a couple of new places to make it more convenient for you, parking better for you, and all the rest of it. Supreme Court, 6-3 decision, as you can imagine. It's either 6-1, it's either 8-1, 7-2, or 6-3. The three stooges. And this is the way USA Today starts. It's Supreme Court lets Trump fire hundreds of Education Department workers and dismantle the agency. They go on. An ideologically divided Supreme Court on July 14. This is a news article. Allowed the Trump administration to fire hundreds of workers from the Education Department and continue other efforts to dismantle the agency. All right, let's start from the beginning. The President of the United States also is the number one executive over the executive branch, of which there are millions of employees. Estimates are 2.5 million. We're talking about 1,400 people here, okay? 1,400 people at the Department of Education. What's going on here is the government is not used to laying people off. These are lifetime jobs. That's how they're viewed. That these agencies will exist forever. And in comes Donald Trump, following up on our promise, trying to get government under control and spending under control. Since we've had a Department of Education, I think it's 1978 or 79 under Jimmy Carter, our education has plummeted. Quality education has plummeted. The teachers' unions have become more powerful. There's a reason why the NEA was the special interest behind the creation of the Department of Education. It is a nasty operation. I worked there briefly under President Reagan. I was the principal deputy assistant secretary for elementary and secondary education. I worked for a fantastic man, Lawrence Davenport, Dr. Davenport. Absolutely fantastic, wonderful, wonderful man who was the assistant secretary of elementary and secondary education, and brilliant, and did a hell of a job. And I learned a lot from him. A lot of what I know I learned from him. Oh, and may I mention he's African American? No. Not because I want to mention it, but because to so many people this is very important. Brilliant man, one of the best men I've ever worked with, one of the best people I've ever known. Lawrence Davenport. And they go on here, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Now, they don't start off with what the court actually decided. They give their opinion on what took place, and then they go right to Sotomayor. The dumbest of the Supreme Court justices. Jackson is the worst. The worst. Sotomayor is the dumbest. She said the majority handed Trump the power to repeal laws passed by Congress by firing all those necessary to carry them out. She said the majority is either willfully blind to the implications of its ruling or naive. But either way, the threat to our Constitution's separation of powers is great. So separation of powers. So who runs the personnel departments in the executive branch? Congress? The courts? No, the executive branch. Now, we all know the Department of Education was actually created by an executive order. Why? Why? Anybody know? Because Jimmy Carter couldn't get it passed by Congress. Today, the Supreme Court again confirmed the obvious. The President of the United States, as the head of the executive branch, has the ultimate authority to make decisions, says Linda McMahon, who is a fantastic education secretary, about staffing levels, administrative organization, and day-to-day operations of federal agencies. Can you imagine if the case went the other way? The President would lose complete control of the bureaucracy, which, after all, is housed in the executive branch. U.S. District Judge Mayang Wang in Massachusetts said the White House's decision to fire more than 1,300 workers has prevented the federal government from effectively implementing legally required programs and services. Such changes can't be made without the approval of Congress, which created the department in 1979, ruled the judge. The Boston First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals backed the decision. That would be a panel. And so what they're saying is, once an employee, forever an employee, untouchable. Once a program, forever a program, untouchable. Then they cite the law and the Constitution to support an outrageous position. Now, if somebody worked in the executive branch for 8 years under Ronald Reagan, I doubt that there's any law that says how many people must be working at the Department of Education. I doubt there's any law that says that this office, that unit, that division must exist within the Department of Education. In fact, I know it's not the case. I worked at the Department of Education briefly. And you know what we did at the Department of Education? We took the funds and turned them into block grants, which is what President Trump is now proposing. We said, why are we sending this money to the states with all these programmatic requirements and dictates and other? We're going to take the money that Congress has passed. They don't tell us every little nuance on how it has to be handled. We are the executive branch. We're going to give the money to the states with some general direction, but not red tape and overwhelming control over what they're doing. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we did. And we didn't need a new law to do it. Ronald Reagan tried to get rid of the Department of Education. You know who blocked him, America? The Republicans. Reagan wins this massive, massive landslide. Popular vote and electoral college vote. Only to outdo himself the second time around. But it is massive. Over 500 electoral college votes, Mr. Producer. And in a three-way race, he gets almost 60% of the vote. Three-way race. And he takes the Senate with him. They become Republican. Nobody anticipated that. And then the House, he has a working majority with what then was a substantial number of so-called blue dog or moderate Southern Democrats, about 40, 50 of them, plus the Republicans. So he had a working majority. But the liberal Republicans in the Senate, some of whom would have lost their seats, would not allow him to abolish the Department of Education because he tried. Donald Trump is doing administratively what can be done and should be done. We tried it too. And the Supreme Court has now backed up Donald Trump because they're right. The real issue of separation of powers goes the other way, not the way Sotomayor says, but the way the majority says. Now, what's interesting about this, let's see here. I'm going down this decision. In this entire decision, in this entire article by USA Today, They have a couple of sentences from Sotomayor. You know how much they quote the majority? Not one sentence. Not one sentence. Quotes the majority opinion. Nothing. Think about that. This is reporting today. This is how grotesque it is. That is how dishonest it is. It truly is appalling.
Mark Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
There's a lot going on in this country today, but one of the things that I think I need to do, and I've done throughout my career here, is to get into some of the heavy substantive stuff, because in some quarters of this country we're losing the debate for America. In other quarters we have individuals, they call themselves influencers, they're undermining America. And we have still others who believe that the best way to compete against and to defeat the Marxist Islamists is to be Marxist Islamist light. And so I think I've got my work cut out for me. I think you do too, and I think I want to jump into this right now. Now let's take this case of this Mamdani as an example, but he's only one of many. He's using this word now, affordability. That's the new word the Marxists are using to justify the fundamental transformation of America. Yet Marxist regimes do not create prosperity, opportunity, or abundance. They produce shortages, impoverishment, and dislocation. This is what they really mean by equality. Moreover, Marxism is about coercion and the abuse of power. So individual freedom and rights are seized as a condition of centralizing power in the hands of the so-called masterminds and their ideological ambitions on the road to the so-called promised land. New York is expensive in large part due to already existing soft-Marxism in the city. Rent controls, high taxes, taxes and user fees galore, smothering regulations, all-powerful public sector unions, and the list goes on and on. Despite being the financial capital of America, if not the world, the governmental practices within the city and imposed on its citizens are heavily socialistic. Equality in destitution. Equality in destitution is what is being offered, and a powerful police state to oversee and enforce it. New York City will continue to depopulate, at least of those citizens who work, pay taxes, invest, and run businesses. It will attract the destitute, more welfare recipients, and illegal aliens seeking sanctuary and freebies. As it becomes increasingly unlivable, the grip of the governing Marxists will become tighter and tighter, and their class warfare rhetoric angrier and more unhinged. We've seen it many times before, albeit mostly in other countries. Marxism is a horribly failed and flawed ideology in every respect. It is inhumane and evil. It attracts the support of politicians who excel at demagoguery, propaganda, and deceit, like Zohran Mamdani and his ilk, and little else. Mamdani is only a few years older than Fidel Castro, when he claimed to be a Democrat fighting for the common man. How'd that turn out? How'd that turn out? I want to play a little bit of the late, great Professor Milton Friedman, Nobel laureate, because I'm guessing half to two-thirds of this audience never heard of Milton Friedman or never heard of what Milton Friedman had to say. We miss somebody like him. And Walter Williams and Tom Sowell and so many great men and women of the past, and Tom Sowell, the current. But I want to play a little bit, and then I want to circle back and get into this even more, because I think this is necessary now. I've got to use this format. I've always used it for educational purposes, but I've got to do it more now. Here is a Milton Friedman with Phil Donahue in 1979. So that's 46 years ago. Oh, why capitalism is best. Cut 17, go.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power with it, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
More Milton Friedman, 1979. Spreading the wealth. Cut 18, go.
Why is it we have so many millionaires and everything in the United States, and we still have so many impoverished people who try to get up into the world? Why is it we have this lack of money where people who can't support themselves decently and get a decent job, where all these big men are up on top making oodles and oodles of money? They don't need it. They can only eat that much, sleep in the bed.
And what do you suppose they do? If they don't eat it and don't use it, what do you suppose they do?
They hoard it.
What do you mean they hoard it? You mean they put it under their pillows?
That's right. No, they keep investing it.
Investing it in what?
That's right, yeah.
What are they invested in?
Well, in oil and everything, where, I mean, all these other people who are
What are they invested in? Don't get off the subject.
No.
What are they invested in?
Well, they invested in a lot of different things that the little people need.
Well, do they invest it in factories?
Yes.
Does some of that money end up in machines?
Yes.
Do those factories and machines provide ordinary working people with jobs or not? What do you suppose the productivity of this country would be and of the wage rate would be if the total amount of capital in this country today was what it was 100 years ago? Where do you suppose the improvements in productivity come from except from the investment by people of their savings? But let me go to your fundamental question. First place, nirvana is not for this world. There is no paradise. Of course we've got a lot of people who are poorly off. But if you look at it over time, if you get a sense of proportion, the well-being of the ordinary people has been the main thing that has been improved by economic progress and economic growth and development. And most residual hard cases of poverty today are the result, again, of a failure of government.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this. Go.
The essential notion of a capitalist society, which I'll come back to, is voluntary cooperation, voluntary exchange. The essential notion of a socialist society is fundamentally force. If the government is the master, if society is to be run from the center, what are you doing? You ultimately have to order people what to do. What is your ultimate sanction? Go back a ways. Take it on a milder level. Whenever you try to do good with somebody else's money, you are committed to using force. How can you do good with somebody else's money unless you first take it away from them? The only way you can take it away from them is by the threat of force. You have a policeman, a tax collector, who comes and takes it from them.
And this is the whole point of my book on power. Because we can talk about liberty, we can talk about rights, we can talk about capitalism, but in the end, what Milton Friedman's talking about there is power. Who exercises it, who controls it, how it's used, under what circumstances. Now, this virtue signaling is constant with the Marxists and the economic socialists. Montesquieu, if you've listened to this program, you know he was a philosopher from the Enlightenment period and the most widely read philosopher during our constitutional period. He said, who would think it? Even virtue has need of limits, so that one cannot abuse power. Power must check power by the arrangement of things. Hundreds of years later, the late British Christian theologian, scholar, author C.S. Lewis underscored Montesquieu's point about the abuse of power disguised as virtue. Here's what he wrote. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It may be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. They may be more likely to go to heaven, yet at the same time likelier to make hell on earth. Their very kindness stings with intolerable insult. To be cured, if you will, against one's will, and cured of states, which we may not regard as disease, is to be put on a level of those who have not yet reached the age of reason, or those who never will. To be classed with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals, he's saying there they treat you like a moron. That you're incapable of feeding yourself, you're incapable of making a living, but for them. Now, the conflict, this is all in my book on power, and it's very important. The conflict between honoring and complying with the institutional limits placed on power. And we have them in our country, and they're being subverted. And the allure of self-aggrandizement is both real and perhaps inevitable over time. As such, the once authentic and thought to be effective institutions for limiting excesses of power are transformed into Potemkin-like fictions, used to disguise the true intentions of the abusers, and worse, are transformed into tools in support of the exercise of what I call soft negative power. This is, as I mentioned the other week, authoritarian democracy. That is what this guy, Mamdani, is promoting. Authoritarian democracy. Authoritarian democracy is when a democracy begins to slide into a form of authoritarianism. Not all at once, but steadily, where authoritarian attributes slowly proliferate, and one branch of the democracy begins to envelop the others, or where all branches coalesce into a whole. Either way, the exercise of power is steadily centralized, and the citizenry increasingly peripheral. I wrote this 4 months ago. This book comes out in 2 weeks. Authoritarian democracies adopt and use the tactics of authoritarian regimes, albeit at first with more of a glove than an iron fist, but the underlying attributes are there. For example, legislatures have passed tyrannical laws, but which laws are said to be legitimate simply because the legislature adopted them. Courts that disregard due process for its citizens, but which trials are said to do justice because they were held in a court of law with defense counsel and juries present. The use of law is said to be a legitimate application of power because it's the law, not because it's proper, just, or moral. Even today, the impact of authoritarian democracy is seeped into our society's psyche so successfully that the late Austrian-American economist Ludwig von Mises observed that one of the worst tyrannies of all, Marxism, has become part of the West psyche. He said, to a considerable extent, without knowing it, many people are philosophical Marxists, although they use different names for their philosophical ideas.
Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
Well, I'm going to have to take another little swim in the cesspool. Unfortunately, all of us will a little bit here. I think I've addressed this repeatedly, but I need to underscore it. President of the United States put out a True Social post today, and I could not agree with him more. As you know, it's been my steadfast position that we have a lot of con men who are trying to exploit this Epstein matter. And in doing so, they're getting hits and clicks and subscriptions and eyes on the so-called new media platforms, the cesspool that is the internet, the cesspool that is social media. Not completely, but by and large. And this is where they live. This is where they live, and this is where they make their money. And it doesn't take much, this cabal, this niche. It doesn't take much to have a very lucrative living if you can fool enough suckers. That's the truth. Now, the president put the following out. The radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again, just like with the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier. The lying 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, which the Dems swore had come from Russia. No, it came from Hunter Biden's bathroom. And even the Russia scam itself, a totally fake and made-up story used in order to hide crooked Hillary Clinton's big loss in 2016, the presidential election. These scams and hoaxes are all the Democrats are good at. It's all they have. They're not good at governing, not good at policy. They're no good at picking winning candidates. Also, unlike Republicans, they stick together like glue. Like glue. Their new scam is what we'll forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters, he has capital in past, my past supporters have bought into this bull crap. Hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. I have had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about, with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Democrats, is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success, because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Make America great again. I get exactly what he's talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, they keep calling themselves influencers. Cable TV calls them influencers. Who are they influencing? These are mostly con men and con women. Let's go back before this Epstein situation. They lied and conned about Iran and Israel. I should know. It was 1 against 1,000. Maybe a handful against 1,000. Me and a handful of others and you. Against these con men and con women who said it would be World War III, who said China and Russia would get involved, who said it would be a massive conflagration in the Middle East, that said that we would lose tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 soldiers. They lied, fear-mongered, scaremongered. I can't tell you how many months it was said to me, how are we going to fight these people? By people who refuse to fight them. Well, I decided to fight them, particularly when I became the target of them. They lie. They deceive. They are not conservatives. They are not constitutionalists. They're not make America great again. They're constantly ripping at our society, ripping at our culture, ripping at our country, ripping at our past military victories, including World War II. I've explained this over the past 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right, Mr. Producer? They're con men and they're con women. Most of them are disgruntled former employees of some other corporation. Some of them have been criminals. Some of them have had more personalities than Sybil. Some of them have hired hookers and perverts. And I go down the list. Very few of them are outstanding. Very few of them are people of real accomplishment. Very few of them are people you'd want your children to be near, I can tell you that. Not all of them, but too many of them. And they latched on to Donald Trump. They didn't help him get elected. Donald Trump was going to get elected, period. They grabbed onto his coattails in order to promote themselves, in order to grift. And then they claim that you and me and the 77 million people who voted for Donald Trump, really, we wouldn't have voted for Donald Trump, but for all of these grifters and con men and con women. It's a lie. You know it and I know it. But the left-wing media and their entrails like Mediaite and Drudge Report, they are orgasmic over the pedophile Epstein, orgasmic over Epstein, because they view this as a way to try and damage this administration. In the long run, even the mid-run, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because you're now going to have a binary decision to make, as they say, a binary decision. Either you stand with the president or you don't. Either you stand with the president or the Epstein orgasmic obsessed con men and con women. Look at each one of these people. Dig into their backgrounds, each and every one of them. What kind of frauds and phonies they are. They don't care about the Epstein files. They want their hits. They want money. Dershowitz has come out and said there is no list. There's no list. Whether somebody said there was a list or wasn't a list, there's no list. But it doesn't matter, right? Then we get the line that Epstein was part of intelligence. And when you actually hunt that down, as I've posted twice, they point to Acosta, the former U.S. attorney who cut the lousy deal with this guy. But there's no first-hand statement by Acosta in that regard. And notice, none of these grifters, none of these con men and women even try to contact Acosta. Or if they did, they can't get an answer. And the fact is, Acosta never said it. It's an article in the Daily Beast, the Daily Bestiality, a left-wing crap site, by a reporter who said he spoke to somebody. Who spoke to somebody? Who spoke to, the claim is, Acosta, who said, yeah, he's part of Intel. That is not Acosta saying anything. I'm not here to defend Acosta, and Epstein got exactly what he deserved. There's no evidence anybody killed him. As they wrote over at National Review, that would be mission impossible with the cameras and everything else there. So there's no evidence somebody killed him. There's no evidence of a list. There's no evidence of intel agencies or Mossad or the Israelis. And you're being played for chumps in order to undermine the president by two elements. The people who hate him, the Democrats and the media, and these con men and con women, many of whom have stabbed the president in the back before. I've explained this over the past 6-8 weeks. What they said about the president in text, what they've said about the president behind his back. They've clung on to Trump because they want the hits, they want the clicks, they want the eyes. And now they're turning on him. And they're using this. First they tried Iran and Israel. Now they're using this. There's a piece in the Free Press by Rebecca Heinrichs called The Rights 1939 Project. It's a great piece. What she has in her piece, I've pretty much been saying over the course of the last 2 months. Over the course of the last 2 months. And there have been a couple of us standing up to this. Unfortunately, she doesn't mention that in her piece, or the Free Press doesn't mention it either. But you here in this massive audience, you know that I've stared these people down. You know that if we hadn't stared these people down, they may have succeeded in pushing an agenda. Which would have wound up with Iran having nuclear weapons and 20,000 ballistic missiles. Because these people are not pro-American. They ingratiate themselves with dictators, with monarchs. They keep trashing our country. As I say over and over and over again, they claim to be America first when they're America last, which is sort of what Rebecca Heinrich says in her piece in the Free Press. That's correct. Those who said we should have gotten out of NATO, like Senator Mike Lee, among others, I've called them out. Crazy. That's crazy. They claim that we're the imperialists. We're the colonialists. America, are you an imperialist? Are you a colonialist? When they trash our country, they're trashing you. That's what they're doing. Whether it's the Marxist Islamists or whether it's these conmen isolationists. They put out comedians out there who are anti-Semites to make their case. They put out phony historians who attacks Churchill and says it's Churchill's fault that Hitler wouldn't stop. How sick is this? And they pass around these phony experts from one podcast to another, one platform to another. They interview each other. They promote each other. It's incestuous. It's a cabal. And then they're platformed. And so this guy, Dave Smith, who's a complete lowlife, he's in a debate with our dear friend Josh Hammer. Should have never happened. Should have been platformed. Well, don't we have a right to ask questions? You don't bring anti-Semites on the stage, do you? Do you bring Klansmen on the stage to have a debate about race? Do you? No, you don't. Not if you're serious. Not if you have principles. This is the time when men and women of principles, values, belief systems, who believe in this country, who believe in the United States military, who believe in American law enforcement, who believe that our veterans are heroes, who believe that the men and women who have fought for this country in the past, God bless their souls, did so because of a righteous cause. They even question World War II. This mix of Marxist Islamists and the isolationist conmen is very dangerous for this country. Even Donald Trump isn't good enough for them. Even Donald Trump is not good enough for them. They're making money off of him. It's too lucrative for them to give up. They want to drag us into the sewer, which is where they operate. With the racism and the bigotry and the anti-Semitism, with the anti-Americanism, with the footsie, with the Marxists and the Islamists. Where they stand with Iran against Israel. Where they stand with Hamas against Israel. Where they stand with Putin and Russia against Ukraine. Where they sound like economic socialists. That's not you. That's not you. That's not me. If President Trump isn't good enough for them, who the hell is? Who the hell is?
Mark Levin.
The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Listen to this. Because you and I, we do care about things like this. We do care about things like this. I just lost the damn thing. Stick with me, America. Hold on here. We're live and national. This is from Israel News Pulse. The entire staff at a hospital in Sawada, Syria, was slaughtered by Islamist terrorists. They say, I will not post the videos in respect for the dead and their families. And there's a photo of the staff, beautiful people. Druze are Arabs. They're a minority sect within the Arab community. The only country that's coming to their defense now is Israel and the IDF. Like they haven't fought enough wars. Israel and the IDF has gone into Syria to defend the Druze who are being slaughtered by terrorist groups with the backing of the Syrian military. Have you heard this today from anybody, or are we just not going to care? Are we so cold now that none of this matters to anybody? You won't hear this on the networks. You won't hear this almost anywhere. Because, you know, the narrative is that the Israelis are slaughtering babies in Gaza. A flat-out lie, too. You actually have now thousands of Druze who live in Israel, side by side with Jews, side by side with Christians, side by side with other Arabs and Muslims, who are pouring into Syria to fight and defend their brothers and sisters. The Israelis, you know, the Jews, the Israelis have gone into Syria again, have attacked brutally the terrorist organizations and, yes, even the Syrian military to push them back, which I believe so far they've succeeded in doing to some extent, and to encourage the Israeli citizens who are Druze to return to Israel so they don't get slaughtered too by the Syrians. This is a hellish part of the world. Hellish. Hellish. I'm sure this won't be reported properly by the New York Slimes or the Washington Compost or the Constipated News Network or MSLSD. I hope and I suspect that the news entities at Fox will at least mention it. But you won't hear it from conservative talk radio these days because that's not what we talk about, is it? No, I guess not. Now, this guy, Zohran Mamdani, he's getting full support from an increasing number of Democrats. This man has refused to object to the terrorist slogan that promotes terrorism, global intifada. He's an anti-Semite. He's a racist who wants to tax white neighborhoods more than other neighborhoods. He's a Marxist pig who wants to seize by force your property, including homes. And Democrat after Democrat, they met him at D.C. They really liked him. He's a good guy. Good guy. He's a nice guy. Here's a montage. Cut one. Fox News, go.
Yeah, fantastic. Zohran Mamdani is an incredible talent. He is going to be a great mayor for New York City.
Did he talk about the globalized intifada? Did he clarify those comments? Did anyone ask him about that?
No.
It's just beautiful to have someone who is so authentic. You know, that money cannot buy that. And we had a great conversation.
I think he's a very personable, smart young man. And I hope we're not going to have a lot of circular firing squads.
Mm-hmm. This guy is effectively another Klansman without the robe. But that's okay, right? Right, Democrats? His ideology is that of Lenin and Mao and Stalin and Castro. But that's okay, right, Democrats? That's okay. No big deal there. Andre Carson, after meeting with Mamdani in D.C. this morning, he likes to remind us time and again that he's Muslim. Cut 2, go.
Speak to people who might still be on the fence here, especially on the globalize the intifada phrase, because that, really did not go over well with some folks out there. What does he need to do besides? I mean,
stupid. It didn't really go over well with some folks out there. Go ahead.
The phrase?
Well, I think he'll speak to it. I mean, some people mean it literally. Some people have repurposed the phrase. They mean it symbolically, and I think he can speak to it better than I can.
It's amazing to me. Now, if some horrific thing was said about gays or blacks or Asians or Hispanics, do you think people will be talking about repurposing language, Mr. Producer? Oh, repurposing language? What kind of claptrap is that? Repurposing language? Repurpose the phrase. The Democrat Party is making clear where it stands, America. And as I pointed out week after week, those who claim to be Republicans and sound like those in the Democrat Party, well, we have to make sure their poison doesn't spread anywhere near us. AOC on Capitol Hill today, another Marxist, Islamist, a.k.a. Stalinist. Cut 3, go.
Get to know him. Get to know him. This is not about having any kind of hard line. I think that if anybody is skeptical, I would say...
stupid? Is she stupider than stupid? Another one who lied about her background. This guy... Mamdani claimed to be Asian and black in order to try and get admitted into certain schools. AOC claimed to be raised in the Bronx when she was raised in Yorktown in Westchester County. Right, Mr. Producer? What was her name? Sandy? Sandy, is that what... Sandy Cortez? Well, what? That's it. Sandy Cortez. That's it. For now on. Sandy, if I can remember, Cortez. Sandy Cortez. Get to know him. Get to know him. He's actually a nice guy. Not voting for a nice guy. What kind of a nice guy? David Duke a nice guy? I wouldn't know. I don't want anything to do with him. Nor would I platform him in a debate in front of a group either, by the way. Oh, yes, he's a nice guy. You got to get to know him. Go ahead.
Know him. And once you get into a room with him, kick the tires yourself and make your own assessment.
Shut up, you moron. Kick the tires. She talks in slogans. She's a sloganeer. That's all she is. Scratch the surface, and what do you have? You have a certifiable moron. She's the leader of the party, and this is who Schumer's worried about, because he's a moron. And I don't know how much Democrats have to learn about other Democrats. It's really shocking, isn't it, the Democrat Party, what it is? Here's the problem, though. You've had open immigration for years now. People have become citizens here. They have not assimilated into this country like this guy, Mamdani. He's not assimilated into American culture. He hates American culture. We have these other guys who we want to deport. They're not assimilating into American culture. They're at war with American culture. Then you have the isolationist con men and con women. They're at war with American culture and American history and so forth and so on. This is why I explain the political spectrum is more a circle or horseshoe, as I've explained over the decades. That is, at the upper left side that comes toward the center, you have the Marxists and the Islamists and so forth. Comes down around, and then at the upper right side, you have the fascists, the thugs, the isolationists, those type, bigots. And they overlap. They have a common hate for the country. They express it in a different way, although less so these days. And then when you go to the bottom of this oval or this horseshoe, the bottom in the center, that's us, constitutional conservatives. We're not right-wing. Since when is supporting the Constitution right-wing? Since when is individual liberty and private property rights right wing? That's the nomenclature they seek to put on us. We're not right wing. We're constitutional conservatives. That's what we are. That's what we are. Man, oh man, Chevy. And from my perspective, and I've told you this, if our friend Curtis, if the mayor, Cuomo don't get together and get behind one of them, they really ought to get behind Curtis. But whatever it is, this guy's going to win. This guy's going to win. And he won't win because he gets a majority of the vote. He'll win with a plurality of the vote. That's all I'll need. One vote more than the next guy. And he's the mayor. For 4 years. Look at what DeCamio did to the city. And for those of you who don't live in New York, and you say, oh, thankfully I have nothing to do with New York, don't be so sure. This is spreading. This is spreading throughout the country. It's spreading in our Congress. These elements are more and more motivated, more and more aggressive. They're out of the closet. We've never seen a Congress like this. We've never seen a Democrat Party like this, quite frankly. Never. Never. This is why I say, let's get behind President Trump. Why are we listening to these conmen and conwomen who don't represent us?
Mark Levin.
We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
Let me ask you folks a question. You got this Mark Halpern out there now saying, I understand there's some stuff here that may upset Donald Trump. Let me just ask you a question. They tried to take out Donald Trump, did they not, Mr. Producer? They threw everything in the kitchen sink at him. Civil suits, criminal suits, 5 different jurisdictions, everything they could think of. They did more than that. They smeared him, they lied about him. Don't you think if the Biden Justice Department had something on Donald Trump, Mr. Producer, they would have released it? I mean, America, this is just basic common sense. Basic common sense. You just have all these people who now have access, given the new technologies and communication and broadcasting and platforms and so forth. They could be as stupid as hell. They can be negative IQ territory. They can be frauds. I mean, we have the fraud room, calls it the war room, but we know what that's all about. They can be guys that have paid for prostitutes, many of them. We know about that guy. He could be a guy that was a libertarian, a liberal, a neocon, and a conservative, and now a nut job. We know who that is. Somebody who couldn't hold a job, had many previous jobs, and now they wind up with a subscription service. Well, there's several of them. And I can go on and on and on. Complete whack jobs. But they're influencers. Influencers. Well, they're not influencing you. Now, it may well be there's a lot of people who live on social media and the internet, but there's a hell of a lot of people who dabble in it, but they don't live there. I'm one of them. I don't live there. There is a radio in every single vehicle on the road. Doesn't mean you listen to radio. Maybe you listen to iPods. It's okay. But there is a connection in every single newer vehicle, and not that new, but newer vehicle, where you can plug in your handheld phone, you know, your Android or your iPhone or whatever you use, and listen. Or you can stream it and listen. This show is everywhere. Everywhere. It's on satellite. It's on AM and FM. It's on live streaming on a computer, a laptop, what have you. It's on YouTube. It's on the Mark Levin app, the iHeartRadio app. There are other platforms. I don't even know what the hell they are. We are everywhere. Everywhere. In fact, the audience is so huge, we can't even do an accurate count of it. Nielsen can't do an accurate count of it. They can't accurately count it. That's how big it is. That's how ubiquitous this audience is. It's impossible to keep track of it. It's impossible to really know. Except we know because of the market system. Because we have fantastic radio stations. We have a fantastic satellite partner. On the internet, we're all over the place. All over the place. We don't just do one thing. We don't just do a podcast. We don't just do a radio show. We don't just do a TV show. We use all the platforms. All of them. And do I come behind this microphone? I'm an influencer. Is that the dumbest damn thing you've ever heard? People who you don't even really know, they're influencers. Because they influence each other. They have a relatively small cabal. Tell you something else. When they list how many followers you have, it's a lie. You got 20 million, 16 million followers. What is a follower? Let's take Twitter as an example. You've gone on Twitter. Maybe you say, I follow this guy. Maybe you don't listen to him ever again. But forevermore, even when you're dead and gone, you're counted as a follower for that podcaster. Right, Mr. Producer? There's no way to clean up that list. So whatever the number is, it's smaller. It's smaller. If I wanted to be a podcaster and only a podcaster, can you imagine the number of quote-unquote followers this program would have? But that's not what I want to do. We have a bigger reach because we've decided that we want to use all the platforms. We are ubiquitous. Whereas others decide they're only going to be a podcaster or a subscription service or a whatever the hell they are. Not me. I want to get the word out all over the place. We have a country to save, a country to promote. All right, enough of this for now. This weekend, we're going to have two great shows on Fox. I'm telling you this for a reason. As you know, it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's the toughest time on the weekends. We're up against sports. We're up against specials. We're up against some of the highest rated programming on network TV. But we don't care. We do the very best we can, and we do very well. And so, on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Elise Stefanik and we have Dan Hoffman. And they're two fantastic guests. Hoffman was the CIA station chief in Moscow. You've seen him on Fox before, but you haven't seen me question him before. I've never spoken to him in my life. And Elise Stefanik, look, there are people who do interviews and people who do interviews. I do a different type of interview. Number one, I try to ask a question that I think is important, not just one that's superficial. And then I actually let the guest finish and provide an answer. This is different. This is a long-form interview program. This is what I grew up enjoying, whether it was Milton Friedman or Bill Buckley and so forth and so on. I have guests on so we can learn from them and listen to them, right? That's why you're a host. You have guests on to listen to them. And then Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And I want to thank Mike Johnson because he had a very busy schedule, but he moved his events around in order to come on. And same with Jack Keane, General Keane. I want to talk about the president's brilliant stroke in dealing with Russia and NATO. I mean, folks, seriously, do you understand how smart this guy is? Do you understand what he's doing for the country? I am serious about this. He's doing things you'd never even imagined before. He's getting American military equipment, the best in the world, to Ukraine, and the Europeans are paying for it. He's gotten them to do something no president's been able to get them to do, to increase the percentage that they contribute to their own defense, and ours do, to 5%. They weren't even doing 2%, some of these countries. He's also managed to negotiate a deal with Ukraine where we have access to these rare earth minerals. Now think about all this. Is there another person who could be president of the United States that would have done any of that? No, there's not. There's not. There's a study out today that proved all of us wrong, except him. That in fact, tariffs, for the most part, are not being paid by consumers, you and me. They are in fact being eaten by most of the producers overseas. That's what the study said. Did you see that, Mr. Producer? You don't hear about it. You don't hear about it. So if there's any price increase going on, for the most part, it's not due to the tariffs. Because these other countries and their businesses are eating them. Now that is unexpected to people like me, but not to Trump. Okay, is there another president that would be doing what he's doing? Here's the other thing. Reagan defeated the Soviet Union. Defeated the Soviet Union economically, and then it fell militarily. Donald Trump has taken that model and has applied it across the world. Not to defeat countries, but to force them to invest in America. And yes, to defeat enemy countries. Yes. Donald Trump saw an America that was losing its status as a superpower. We had nuclear weapons, but our industrial heartland. We were losing our industries. We were losing our skilled labor force. And he said, I got to fix this. I got to fix this, or we're going to become a paper tiger economically here. The entire establishment opposed him. The entire establishment opposed him. Both parties. Now you have Langone, the billionaire from Home Depot, who's a rhino. He says, this guy has the potential of being one of the greatest presidents ever. I'm a believer now, because he's seen what he's done. He's seen what he has done. He has secured the border. Do you understand? Not one illegal alien came into the country last month, and not one came into the country the month before, at least according to the authorities who monitor these things. Not one! Not one! 2 months in a row. Did you ever imagine that? Ever? Of course not. Neither did I. Not one. That's stunning. He just gets a bill passed that triples the size of ICE, that triples the size of the Border Patrol, that gets them the technology and the equipment they need, even before they get any of that. Not one. I think he's making the impossible possible, and people are getting used to it. So it doesn't seem like a great feat, but these are great accomplishments. Great accomplishments.